Good day, everybody. I am Mark Werber, the Director of Association Management Software, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's topic. It's our second installment of Education Tracking. This is Education Tracking Part 2. I'm joined by Diane Clem.
Hi, everyone.
And Frank Rittersdorf from the AMS Support Department.
Just one of the usual suspects.
And we are coming to you live from Simi Valley, California in our multimedia studios. It takes a village to produce these webinars, so I'm joined from left to right by Sabrina, who's our marketing coordinator, Mark Boatman, who turns the knobs behind the scenes. That's me in the middle, and I'm joined by our excellent presenters, Diane and Frank.
And the version of Magic we'll be using today is 9.28.15. You may notice the screens that we use in Magic look a little different to what you see in your Magic. If that's the case, please contact us so that you can have the latest and the greatest version of Magic to work with at your association.
Okay, let's get into today's agenda. The topic is education tracking. Before we get into Part 2, we're going to have a brief review of what we covered in Part 1. Today we're going to cover reports, specifically the education tracking report that tells you who has and who has not met the requirement, merges, so you can correspond with your members or create a custom export, education transmittal setup, specifically how to report this information electronically.
We also have a nice little agenda for our review. First, we're going to cover why we use education tracking. We're also going to cover how does everything relate, and we're going to remember that, as well as we're going to highlight the process of creating the education tracking and setting it up.
And a reminder, why do we use education tracking? We use tracking to identify who has or has not met the education requirements, for example, for ethics, or for designations, or for license renewal.
How does it all relate? Well, if you remember last time, we talked about how you create a category. And within that category, you create certain requirements, like, for instance, the courses you put in there that will fulfill the actual requirements for that particular category. From there, then you create the times and dates of that content, which the courses would be presented. So again, essentially, the course links the classes to the category that the actual members will be taking.
All right. And last time, we did not answer the question, which came first, the chicken or the egg. However, we did answer which came first, the criteria, or the category, rather. The category comes first before the course. We created tracking, and we updated tracking, and we paid very special attention to criteria, criteria, criteria.
So now let's talk about today's new topic. Education tracking, the reports, and the emerges. Now remember, you want to run the appropriate utilities first before you even try to pull up a report or a merge, because then your data will not be accurate if you don't. You need to do the utilities first. Now why are we doing the reports? Well, what reports and the merges are going to do is take that data regarding the education tracking and make it into a usable output. So we're not looking like this guy here wondering what happened with it. Why is his wall got pink wallpaper on there? All confused. Dazed and confused there. So, what reports we're going to cover? Again, we talked about education tracking report, as well as the different merges. We're going to focus on education tracking merge and the courses needed merge.
So let's talk about the education tracking report. This is an organized form of output to help us learn who has or has not fulfilled the education requirements for whatever we happen to be tracking. Frank will take us to Magic so we can take a look at that.
Well, where do we find this report? We're going to go to Managers, Education, Reports, Education Tracking Report. And as you can see, we have a number of fields that we want to fill in for the criteria. Well, we have the Format option is the first, where I can zoom in and select Summary or Detail. I love the details. We're going to do the Sort option. I like Member by Name, or member name, or you can do it by office, or even have it office, and each office can be on a separate page. So what does types mean? Again, this goes back to our education or our category types. For this instance, because we're doing the ethics, we're doing continuing education type. But again, you can also use designations tracking as well for a type. Certifying office is the default that we have in here. Categories, we can just type in ETH3. That's the category we had set up for our ethics. Statuses, if I zoom in, you will actually be able to see the completed or pending. In this case, we're going to use the pending status. So we want to see the members that have not completed the ethics. We have the association. Our member status is going to be active. Pretty much everything else will leave blank. You do have an option here to click this button, which includes members without registrations. So if you leave this unchecked, it will just show who's registered but have not yet completed the requirements. Who's registered for certain classes and what classes are registered for but not completed the actual requirements. If I check this, it will include everybody who has not completed the actual ethics requirements. So I'm going to hit report. I'm going to do a Control-I, tab over for preview, and hit Y for yes, and give enter about 3 different times. This will pull up our report. I click on it, and it will give us something we can read. Now, let's take a look at some of the criteria we've got in here. We've got course number and course description, which I do see Ethics 3 as our category here, and our course is, this person is not registered for a course in this group. So let's go down here.
So that's a good example of those.
Exactly. Someone that's not registered for a class, but we do have some people registered in here. So for instance, here we go. Here we have, this is one.
Again, it's no courses. Yeah.
Here's one here. We have the ethics course group, which is the ethics class for 2012. We have the date that the class is going to take part on with the credit, and then actually the number of credits as well. So this member is already registered. He just hasn't been able to, he hasn't completed the class as of yet. If you don't see the course information, that means that they have not even registered for a class that falls under the course at this time. So that's what that report looks like. We can actually go to a Control-End really quick, and you can actually get your totals. So at this point, we have 95 of our members that have not fulfilled the ethics training. Okay, so let's escape out of this, and we'll get a nice little review over in our PowerPoint. Diane, you want to take that?
Sure, I'll be happy to do that. The Education Tracking Report, we took a look at what the report is, an organized form of output. We paid attention to selecting our criteria. What type of tracking are we doing? What state are we tracking in? What category are we tracking? Do we want to look at members who have completed or not? And do we want to include members without registration if we're looking for pending members? So now let's take a look at education tracking merges. This is a way to correspond with members that have to fulfill the requirements for tracking or that have already fulfilled them. And like with any other merge, you can use them to create letters in Word or manipulate your data in Excel.
So let's find the merges in Magic. So we're going to use the merge up on the ribbon. Scroll down to Education, Education Tracking Merge. We have a lot of the same data or the same fields that the report has. The one thing I want to really kind of focus on real quick is the zip code. Always make sure that you do a clear all, select all, and then hit done, because you don't want to miss a zip code in there, and that you would be missing some of your members. We'll zoom in into the type again, click Continue Education. We're in the state of California, so we're going to type in CA there. Again, our category is Ethics 3. Education status, you have the options of completed, pending. If you leave it blank, it will do both. So I'm just going to do pending because a lot of times you're going to be corresponding with the members that have not taken or have not completed the ethics training. Member statuses, you probably just want to go to active, and then pretty much everything else you can leave blank. You can include duplicates if you like, or you can leave it blank and say, I don't care if they've taken ethics twice, I just care if they've taken ethics, period. So we'll hit continue. You have different formats. We like to hit preferred media because you get the most information. This is where you would format this merge. The address option be office, I like to change the sorting to member last name, but you can also do it by office. And you can continue. And when the merge file has been created, it gives you this little result box here where it tells you how many of members that are in the merge. So you have 91 records. Also keep close attention to where the output is going. This is the default See My Documents, but I have seen a number of customers where they have a custom place where they put the merge file. So make sure you pay attention to this here so you can find the actual file. Okay, let's go ahead and review.
Thanks, Frank. So we talked about education tracking merges as a way to correspond with members to do with their ethics requirements. We paid attention to the criteria, looking at the type of education, the state, the category we're tracking, and the status of whether or not they've completed their classes.
And real quick, I want to go back. There was one other merge I wanted to show you, which was the merge here, education, courses needed merge. Now, I know in our example right now we're talking about ethics, the ethics training, and we said make it simple where they just take one course and that will fulfill that ethics because that's what NAR says they can do. But we know there's also other reasons you would use education tracking. And some of that might be designations where they have to take in multiple classes or courses to fulfill the requirements. This is a great merge to set up in here to pull off and see what courses certain members still have to take to fulfill whatever requirements you're doing, whether it be designations, license renewals, and so forth. So this is a great merge here to see, again, that you can use, and you can actually put in a letter and send out exactly what courses they need to take so the member knows exactly what they need to register for. So it's a great little merge here, I think. Definitely take a look at this, and if you need any further assistance, definitely give our support a call. Let's go back. So we kind of talked about the courses needed merge.
That's right. We finished up with that courses needed merge so that we can notify members of courses they need to fulfill designation requirements or something like that.
Now let's talk about the education transmittals. What does the education transmittals look at? Well, it's really important to know that education transmittals is mutually exclusive to your internal tracking. You could set up, how do I want to phrase this? You don't have to set up any of the education tracking in-house in Magic for you to be able to transmit your education transmittals to NERDS.
Two totally separate processes.
Exactly. Two separate. They don't look at each other at all. So again, we talked about the education tracking. We had the category. We had the courses that fill the requirements, again, which is the content. And then we also have the times and dates that the members are taking these courses and this content's being presented. Well, in education transmittals, it only looks at the times and dates in the grade of the class. That fulfills under your setup, your course setup. So you will see here that, again, we'll kind of show you more specifically once we get into Magic.
Okay, so education transmittal setup. So just like this happy cat at the piano here, when you name your course IDs, you can choose whatever is your fancy. You can call your course whatever you like. There's a field in transmittals for you to put your course ID, and then the next field that you're going to come across is the NERDS course number, and this is per NERDS specification. Aside from that, the NERDS course number is consisted specifically of certain characters. For new members, it's going to be the current year plus the number 1. 1, I suppose, indicates that it's the first year they're taking their education. We found this a little confusing and verified with NERDS that, are you sure it's not relative to the cycle we're in? And they confirmed that, yes, it's always going to be the number 1. So for 2012, it'll be 2012, the number 1, and it'll always be that, just specific to the year. For current members or continuing members, it'll be the year, the letter C, and the number of the cycle you're in. The cycle is which quadrennial we're working in. So far, there have been 3. This is the 3rd cycle. So for 2012, your number would be 2012, C, the number 3. Next is the NAR ID. This is also per NERDS specifications, and it's going to tell NERDS whether this is a new or continuing member. For new members, the number is COEN for new. For continuing members, it's COEC for continuing. When you send an education transmittal, you're always going to do this manually. It's not an automated process. You can use either your NERD's master receiver or you can set up a specific education receiver. You can call it something like EDU or something similar.
Now let's take a look at all of this information in Magic. Hopefully that will bring a little bit of context to the subject. So let's go into Magic here. We'll go to Managers, Data Exchange, Send Transmittals. We're going to go into Setup, find the receiver information, and like Diane had mentioned from the slide, you can actually have your own receiver for education, or you can just use the NERD's receiver, because they both will have the Education tab. We set it up under the Education. So I'm going to click on the Education tab. Now you can see our two courses that we created. Again, that was our fancy to create the Ethics 12 and Orientation 12. Once you enter them in, it will populate the description for you. And then now we'll go to the actual course number, which again is NERD specified. So in case we have the year, which is 2012, then C, and then 3. And for 2 members, it's just 2012. And have that crazy 1 that NERD says will always be. From there, we go to the NAR ID. For current members, COEC, and for new members, COEN. So these 2 fields here is what's going to correspond. It's going to let NERDs know what type of ethics class that this member took. Now, as you can see, we did it by year. So if, for instance, you had 2009 in here, you had 2011 in here, 2010 in here, and you've already sent all of those members up that have taken those classes, you can actually uncheck the send here. Uncheck the send, and now when you send an education transmittal, they would not send or attempt to send. But if you want the members to be sent, in this case for 2012, because now people are still continuing taking classes and under that course, you want to make sure that that box is checked.
And keep in mind, we're just showing you this setup so you know where to find it. And you can take a look at it if you have any questions on what's actually being transmitted. We'll do the setup for you. You don't have to worry about setting that stuff up.
Well, let's talk about how you actually send, just in case you don't know where to go to send an education transmittal. So we're going to go to Managers again, Data Exchange, Send Transmittals. We just stay right under the Processing tab. We see Education Transmittal. And it's pretty simple. You just find your receiver. In that case, we do Education, EDU. Fills in all the information. Now, this is where you claim in your class completion date. Now, once you've already sent Education Transmittal, it won't send it twice. So you can actually start the date 010109 to beginning of a cycle and go to whatever your current date is. Or you can try to remember when you last sent your last transmittal and do the next day from there.
Yeah, some people do it monthly.
And you can do it monthly as well. Exactly. It's on intervals. So it's your choice. We're actually not going to send it, but this is where you go, and that's basically, it's that simple to actually send an education transmittal. So that's pretty much the content. Let's go ahead and summarize. We covered part 1 of the review, where we kind of reminded you of the process, where we created tracking, we updated tracking, as well as criteria, like my Aunt German Helga always likes to say. And then also we go to reports, where we specified on the education tracking report, as well as the different merges, education tracking as well, letting your members know what courses they need to take, whether it be ethics or designations. You can send a merge out there. And then education transmittal setup. We talked about the specifications that NAR has for the NAR course number and the NAR ID, which we did also remind you that your courses, again, it's your fancy. Write whatever create your courses whatever you like. You're just going to translate them to these NAR course numbers and IDs. And also we kind of showed you how to generate the electronic transmittal. So now it's time for the question and answer session. Let's take a look here.
All right, give us a second. We're just going to read through the questions that were asked by the attendees and see if there's anything on there. Okay. You'll notice that this was part 2. So if you have not seen part 1, that's where we actually set up all of the education tracking. And today we just reviewed or reference the education tracking. So if you want to review part 1, you can go to Rapattoni's website under the Support Center for Magic. You'll see the recorded webinar there for you to preview. Okay, another question. Do I have to update tracking before I send a transmittal? No, you do not. Education tracking and education transmittals are entirely separate. They're independent of each other. So remember, education tracking lets you know who has or who has not met a requirement. Education transmittals is configured in data exchange to send ethics requirements to NAR. So they are truly independent of each other. How does Magic know what to include in the transmittal? You configure which courses qualify for transmittal. So you have a course of study that meets the ethics requirements. Then you go into Magic. Can you refer to that again?
Yeah,
Talk
sure.
Back to that one. You go into Magic's data exchange, send transmittals, under Setup, in the receiver information, under the Education tab, you would add your course of study here. Again, if you need any assistance with setting up your courses that qualify for NAR, please give us our support center a call, and we'd be happy to help you set that up.
And we may note that it's actually when a member passes the class that makes that record eligible for transmittal. So when that grade is changed to P is when that member's class record becomes eligible to transmit if you've got that course information set up in your transmittal rules.
Okay. I don't see any other questions, so let's move on to the next topic.
Okay, just a quick reminder as well. If you have any other topics that you'd like us to cover or you want to suggest to cover, please email webinars@rapattoni.com. We would be glad to take a look at those.
To view past and future webinars, and again to review our Tracking 1 webinar, or to register for upcoming webinars, go to www.rapattoni.com, click on the word Support, Magic, go to Webinars and Training Videos, and you can see a history of all the past webinars and also a list of any future webinars, so you can register for those, I believe, 2 weeks in advance.
Also, another great resource that we have on our website is our Magic resource articles. You can actually go to the same thing, www.rapattoni.com, go to Support, Magic resource articles, where we have a list of different topics that can definitely help you get through certain processes. You can actually, there's a search function there, so if you're working in education, you can search education, and all relevant articles should come up for you.
Okay, as is our tradition around here, we close each one of our webinars with the Rapattoni Wrap-Up.
The Rapattoni Wrap-Up.
The wrap-up may include anything of interest or importance that we want to share with you. In today's edition, we want to inform you of
our next Magic webinar.
That's right.
Our next Magic webinar will be on March 28th, 2012. We are going to cover the end of the dew season. It's time for that spring cleaning. The webinar will highlight the tools that assist in identifying, collecting, notifying, and inactivating your non-paying members.
That's right. This is a timely webinar scheduled right around the end of the annual due cycle. And we're going to tell you what to do with those members and those invoices. So please attend. It'll be a great session. And finally, the NAR Central Database Compliancy is quickly approaching. The June 30th, 2012 is the deadline to become compliant. If you have not already, or you need some more information, please contact our support department to set up your central database configuration. The configuration does take us some time to set up, and it can be quite time consuming, so you should schedule your installation well in advance of the June 30th deadline. Based on our current commitments, we can schedule an additional 25 installations before the deadline. If you are planning on becoming CDB compliant by installing Rapattoni's central database feature, please contact our sales department, and there's our number on the screen. Okay, again, thank you for participating in Education Tracking. Thank you, Frank and Diane. Great webinar today, and we'll talk to you in about a month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.